What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 493 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer and Austin Yamada to talk the top five most surprising things in the Western Conference. Some positive, a lot of negative. With me to do so again, Drew Dinkmeyer and Austin Yamada. Austin, how you doing?
Good. Yeah. I think a lot of things went as we expected, and even more things have not gone as expected. But I think that's just kind of how the NBA season works every year. So excited to talk about maybe what surprised us the most.
For sure. Dink, how you feeling today?
Good, yeah. We're past like what was a brutal schedule the last week in terms of games and back-to-backs and stuff. We're still in a little bit of that condensed schedule period early in the season because of the NBA Cup, but feeling good that like, man, it's already been like what 12% of the or like 15% of the league's games are already done on the regular season. Like it's like just been a wild kind of quick first few weeks of the season.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about what's really the big story of the NBA right now. It's Nico Harrison finally getting fired, which about a week ago didn't seem that surprising. But going back to they got Cooper Flag and Anthony Davis was healthy. They had like an interesting offseason, didn't have like a bad offseason overall. But yeah, he's gone. I heard from Mark Stein they were trying to keep him on for the year to kind of give him a shot to turn it around, but the fans, man, they are chanting "Fire Nico" during Mavs free throws, and yeah, it got out of hand. And apparently, the players just hated it. They spoke with the media before yesterday's game. So, yeah, Dink, what do you think of Nico Harrison getting fired? There should note also Michael Finley and someone else, I forget who, is taking over in the interim. There's certainly going to be big game hunting for a good GM here. I've heard Dennis Lindsey's name come up here, but I think what do you think about this Nico Harrison firing?
The power of the people. I guess
Yeah.
I guess it's still a democracy in NBA streets as the people rose up and were able to oust the leadership that they didn't want in office anymore. And so I think that's great. I think from a actual like process standpoint for Dallas Mavericks ownership, this is like a huge learning experience that hopefully they will take to heart. I think it's insane to have made the trade and fire the person basically when the trade has like we have no idea of how the trade has looked for Dallas because AD and Kyrie haven't been healthy together at the same point. So like I think it's insane to sign off on the trade and say yes, you should make this trade and then fire the person before seeing the results, but it speaks to how bad the trade should have never been signed off on in the first place, which was outrageous, and how out of touch the ownership was with the fan base in terms of how connected they felt to this player and what the ramifications of making this type of trade would be. So I think it's just really speaks poorly of Dallas's ownership group, which obviously has changed in terms of majority ownership from Mark Cuban over the years, and it just speaks really poorly on them. I don't think the trade made any sense. I think it was a loss from the start for Nico, and I think that he should never been allowed to make the trade. And honestly, I think he should have been fired for even proposing the idea of the trade. But that once they decide to go through with the trade, I think it's insane that he's fired now when it's like, oh yeah, you're losing games without Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. And the whole idea of like what you were trying to put together was Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. I think it's just like reactional management that, I think, John Daigle, who we had on before after the trade, who's a Mavs fan, ETR NFL contributor, he had messaged me and he's like, I don't feel satisfied. And I think that's how a lot of Mavs fans are going to feel, that like they're not going to feel satisfied for a very long time because Luka's going to be in the league, destroying the league in Los Angeles. And they're going to wonder, this team that got to the finals, what it could have been. So I think, unfortunately, they're trying to right a wrong. And I don't think it's a rightable wrong in this instance. Yeah. I think they're going to live with the consequences of this transaction for a long time.
Yeah, and then just before I throw it to you, Austin, should note that there's already reporting they're trying to trade Anthony Davis. Should also say that there's reporting that Nico Harrison was trying to get Anthony Davis back sooner than he should have. This new calf thing. So the new information coming out is quite damning on Nico. They're kind of kicking him on the way out there. But anything you want to add on this fight? I want to talk more on court stuff on how bad they've been.
Yeah, I actually don't agree with Drew at all here. I think that he had to go, and when he did, if not earlier. And the main reasons actually don't really have to do with the trade at all. I think like the biggest thing is just sort of like the reports that we saw even before he got fired about how he ran things is the bigger issue. And like whether or not this trade was a success, I think just we've seen the entire time he's been there just a lack of accountability, an arrogance about him that he would fire employees under him that didn't listen to him. It was like his way or the highway. Even after being fired, that interview that he gave about not to be arrogant, but I've worked with, Fortune, like that was just so poor taste. Let's not forget that the company that he was talking about was Nike, where he's the one that was in charge of the Steph Curry presentation that he fumbled. He did not even change Kevin Durant's name during the presentation, nor did he offer Steph Curry a signature sneaker, and that caused one of the biggest stars of this generation to go to Under Armour. He hasn't had a track record of success when he points to these other check the track record. My guy, you've failed in other places too. So and I think like the way that the reports were about the way that he did not tolerate other sort of freedom of thought, and just the arrogance about like, they asked him, like, do you think you made mistakes or whatever? And he said, I'm out of the box. Sometimes out of the box is good. Maybe so, but like, it wasn't a consensus backed out of the box. It wasn't like, let me pitch my idea to those I work with and see if they agree with it. Can I get them on my side? It was, no, I'm in charge and I'm going to do this. And I think that's just a really poor leadership quality. And then on top of that, I think other reasons for the timing making sense right now was the Jason Kidd talked about how the fire Nico chants at home were like extremely, disrespectful and like, not that I disagree with them, but just like generally not a home court advantage. Like they were not helping the Mavs. They were not helping the players. They were distracting. And on top of all of that, we have the reports of like the trust eroding away that like Nico said AD is cleared to play, and the owner who had, just blindly listened to the GM his whole tenure saying, I don't know that I don't trust that AD is cleared to play. I want more information. I want more health records that he really is okay to play, because I don't want to rush him back to save your hot seat because you're feeling the pressure. When this is a guy that could get re-injured for the whole year, we might want to get out of this mess. You're gone anyways. So I'd rather make sure that the guy you traded for is healthy enough to trade at the deadline for some pieces back. So I think once that trust erodes, there's not even a point in letting him continue the rest of the season if you don't trust him that he's like of high integrity, like that he has the best interest of the organization at heart versus his own job. So those were my thoughts. I thought that letting him go when it did made sense, and I don't think it was necessarily reactionary to their poor start. I think it was just sort of the culmination of all of these things, and like what realistically, like when's Kyrie getting back? Like maybe with a month left in the season at best. Like you won't really be, nothing good is going to come out of it in my opinion. And that's just someone who was higher on the Mavs going into the season, who backed the Mavs a few times early in the season. They weren't ever a real contender. So I kind of agreed with the timing as is.
Yeah, I'll say I thought I was like saying he's gone. That game they lost to the Pelicans with the Pelicans on a back-to-back without Zion in Dallas, I thought that was like they lost that game. They blew it down the stretch. I thought that was it. So I don't know. I think I'm more on Austin's side. He had to go. He just had to go. So let's talk on court though.
Oh yeah, I want to be very clear. I think he had to go, but I think he had to go way before the decision that was made. True. I think the result of all these things is like all of the. I guess the point you guys are making is ultimately like Dallas ownership now sees the way that he is, and you have to make this decision once you see it. I'm saying you should have seen it much earlier. Like the way that he went about this trade, where he's only discussing with one team, he's not marketing the player at all. He's having individual discussions that are separate from the front office. Before the trade was even suggested to ownership, they should have known and understood all of these things were happening, right? Because the news hadn't leaked to anybody else in like, there wasn't a report like Mavs shopping Luka Doncic. So ownership had to have known all these things before. So my point is not that he shouldn't have been fired now. It's that like, it's insane to me to have let this go on to this point and then be like 10 games in the season, be like, it's too much now. It's like, this was all happening well before all of these issues with the egomaniacal, like firing of people, the way he handled the press conferences immediately after the trade. That was all happening before. So like, I'm surprised we got to the start of this season with him in position. And then like 10 games into the season, you could be like, yeah, that's too much. That's my note. It's just that I think that's bad management. Just now you're saying like, well, once they realized it, they made the decision they had to go. And I agree with that to some extent, but I'm like, this should have been made long ago. Like they should have never, the moment that the idea was proposed to management, they should have been like, okay, let's okay, you have this idea. I hear your pitch. Luka might not be the future of the franchise. We've got these concerns on fitness or whatever. Okay, what's the market that you've looked at in terms of, no, we've had one conversation. There's one player we're interested in. I'd be like, all right, well, I'm good. Like, I have all the information I need. Like, you're not the guy for me if you're not interested in seeking out a market. What are you going to get from Los Angeles in this back? Are you going to get picks? Are we going to build in the future? You can get Austin Reeves. Like, Austin Reeves looks like a good young player. No. We're just going to get Anthony Davis. We're going to get Max Christie. Like, it seems so obvious at the time. Yeah. So that's my contention, is just that I think this reflects very poorly on ownership as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we're all watching the tweets come in last year, we're like, well, those are fake. Those are fake. Like, everyone thought it was freaking fake. So I don't know. Austin, anything on court you've noticed? I think it's just bottom line. They don't have a point guard. It's funny that, like I talked about this last time, we talked about the Lakers. The Lakers are first in pick and roll efficiency. The Mavericks are last, and they're last in offense by a lot. Like, the Nets are in the league, and like their offense is worse than them. I don't think it's going to get better. I think they're going to be trading Anthony Davis for something. It's over. So like, on top of what we're saying, hey, you get new management in there. You're not married to your decisions you made. So I don't know. I think it's a rebuild coming. What do you think about the on-court product and what's to come ahead?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I thought they'd be better. Although I guess AD, who I think is still a top 10 player in the NBA, has been out. So it's really hard to evaluate their team. I thought that their offense would be bad, but I thought that their defense would be really good, like top 3 to 5 defense. And it's been like top 7. I think it has been a good defense. But unfortunately, like, they are deciding to play with pace. Yeah, but they're deciding to play with pace, and which is like taking away their best asset, which is their half-court defense. And their offense is not good. Like, they are like I've talked about this with a couple other teams. Like, in order to play with pace, you have to reap at least the rewards you're getting offensively as the opportunities you're giving up defensively. And Dallas is not doing that, so it doesn't make sense for them to play with pace. And then the other thing is, I thought they would overwhelm people with their size and on the boards, and like, they haven't really dominated the boards. If anything, they're giving up like the 3rd or 4th most rebounds. So the defense has been good.
Second highest offensive rebounding rate allowed right now.
Right. So like, if you're going to choose to play this way, you kind of have to lean into it. You can't just play fast and not dominate the boards, but say you're big at every position. And then, like, we'll talk about this with other teams, both here and other segments in the East, but like, I am kind of a vibes guy. Like, their vibes have not been good. Effort, that all does matter. And then, like you said, I think the lack of ball handling, lack of shooting, which we thought would be a problem, has been an even bigger problem. So, I don't think that they're a great team, and we don't have AD, but I did think that they would be better than they have been.
Yeah, Brandon Williams been playing better, much to our chagrin, under him. But think anything you want to add before we move on?
I would just say that, like, a theme that we talked through in the last podcast as well is sort of guard play and like, or lead handler play. And I think if you like kind of look across the league at teams that have surprised on the upside, you'd be like, oh, they've gotten kind of better guard play than I'd expect, or better lead handler play than I'd expect. If you look at the teams that have like really struggled this season more than expected, it's been like, oh, that lead handler is like not playing very well at all. And I think, or not available, or like so on and so forth. So I think with that kind of construct in mind, looking like top down, it makes sense when your lead handlers were all inexperienced guys or D'Angelo Russell, like that this would be a little bit of a struggle from an offensive perspective. And I think the hope is that Anthony Davis could himself sort of like raise the floor to being like an average offense with Cooper Flagg, and we just haven't gotten to see it enough. I think Cooper Flagg's playing better as he's playing positionally appropriate a little bit more the last few games. So I think that's encouraging. In terms of the future of the Mavs, yeah, I think now you've like opened the floodgates to like, what is the purpose of this like Kyrie and AD stuff kind of going forward? Let's like reset the timeline around Cooper Flagg. The challenge is Nico gave everybody an extension. Everybody got an extension before this. PJ Washington got an extension. Derek Lively got an extension. Daniel Gafford got an extension. So the good news is some of those numbers are like reasonable in terms of trade assets, but it's going to take a while to kind of work through this. And I think, you know, if whoever in Dallas has got co-GMs now to like make decisions, their job in terms of picking through this when they have, you know, potentially a premier trade asset that it unfortunately is going to be compared to what they gave up before is going to be challenging. Like it's going to be a challenging notion to trade Anthony Davis. It's harder to trade like really expensive guys just naturally. But then when you're anchored to what you acquire, what you gave up to acquire him just last year, and it's such little time in between, it's going to be hard to sell that. Like, so I think it's going to be a bit of a tedious selling process if they sell off pieces. And I think it needs to be a more aggressive sell off process because I think most of these assets are only declining in value from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So let's shift gears to a positive surprise, and we'll stick with the Lone Star State and go with the Spurs. Off to a really good start. Did lose to the Warriors last night. Their offense has been fantastic. Defense also been very good. Top 10 in both categories overall. Obviously, Wembanyama is certainly the headline here. 30-point triple-double last night. In a loss, Draymond Green guarded him pretty well despite the big stat line there. But yeah, Austin, what have you been seeing from the Spurs? And of course, the big question is, do you think that they could sustain this and be a top 4 seed in the conference?
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the most surprising things to me about the start of the season is how good the Spurs have been. And it's not really lucky. If you look at like their defense, their net rating, like a lot of things, they like everything that you can look at statistically would back up that they have been this good. Now, does that mean they're going to be sustainably this good for the rest of the season? I don't know. That's just saying that process wise, based on what we've seen thus far, they have earned their results. And a lot of that was without De'Aaron Fox. So like, I do think that the majority of this team is built obviously on Wemby. Like he is the backbone of this team. And if he were to miss time, which is part of the reason that I leaned the under on the regular season win total, was like, if he does get hurt, I don't think this team's very good at all. I think he might be the most, him or Jokic are the most valuable players in basketball right now. To the point where like if he changed his stints to 2 stints, I would start looking at live betting against the Spurs when he's out, just like his brief stint, because they're just the rest of the team is functioning around him. But at the same time, I did not expect. I did think they'd be this deep. I did not expect some of their like young players to take this big of leaps. I think Steph Castle's probably the biggest one. I thought he'd be pretty inefficient. He's shooting 50% from the field, 8 assists a game. Just playing really good defense, getting a lot of loose balls. He's like this like supercharged version of Marcus Smart that is also scores a lot and is super efficient while doing what prime Marcus Smart things did. And so I think I was wrong there. I thought Castle might take a step back this year, and that has not been the case thus far. Now, will that continue? I don't know. Like, was Dylan Harper's hot start? Will that sustain when he comes back? Like, there's a lot of things that are unknown, but what they've done thus far has earned what they have been given. The one word of caution I would provide, besides the fact that the shooting percentage may not sustain, because also like Wemby is shooting a lot of like really difficult long twos that I don't trust necessarily will hold up all season, is their turnover rate. Their top 3 in Castle, Wemby, and De'Aaron are combining for 12.6 turnovers a game. That is more than OKC and Boston gave up as a team last season. And if you look at the top 5 teams in taking care of the ball last year, they were OKC, Boston, Cleveland, Indiana, and the New York Knicks, which are basically like, other than Minnesota, the 5 teams left standing last year. Like, if you want to be a good team this league, you must take care of the ball. The fact that their top 3 is turnover more than entire teams is like extremely concerning. We saw against Golden State last night. Like, it's not that Golden State could stop Wemby; it's that they forced a million turnovers, and like that is the recipe to lose if you were the Spurs. So I think that is like the one main thing is like, I don't really trust their ball handling.
Yeah, Castle triple-double with Wembanyama as well. Has been running very hot on potential assists lately, but as a whole, he's kind of average here. Dick, I think that's probably I don't think Wembanyama going off isn't like that surprising. Yeah. We've talked about it before, but really Stephen Castle stepping up, Devin Vassell being healthy, Harrison Barnes giving him good minutes. So everyone's kind of producing at a strong level besides the turnovers. And I'll also add their transition defense is the best in the NBA. So you've got Wembanyama back there taking care of the paint, and you're limiting transition, which makes it really hard for teams to score.
Yeah, I thought Austin did a great job kind of highlighting all the different aspects of what we've seen from San Antonio this year. I would agree with you that like we were just waiting to see how big the jump is for Wembanyama. It's just like each year, it's like we know there's going to be one year that just like is a oh god year with this profile, and we're just like waiting. Is this the year that's happening? It looked like that the first few games. He's tailed off a little bit since then. I think Steph Castle, we were a little bit like, yeah, late season production was pretty inflated from playing without Wembanyama, without Fox. He hasn't really shot the ball well at the collegiate level or at the professional level. He's shooting 23% from three this year. Like, that's kind of a tough profile. And like, bigger wing guard who kind of needs the ball in his hands but doesn't shoot very well, like, that's a tougher profile to be like great. But he's been great so far, even with that profile. And it's interesting because we're seeing this right with like Amen as well in Houston, where the freak athleticism combined with the defensive intensity and the ability to help turn other teams over is allowing the lack of shooting to be less of an issue. And especially with both those two Texas teams, they have floor spacing bigs, right? Jabari Smith, like Alperen Sengun's even spacing a little bit more. Victor Wembanyama spacing now. Harrison Barnes, who they'll use like as a floor spacer as well. So it's like making things kind of work. I'm interested to see how things progress going forward with Fox, Castle, Harper, who all seem to sort of need the ball in their hands. Like how much, and I think the Spurs are kind of correctly seeing that like we probably need the ball in Castle's hands because De'Aaron can floor space a little bit and Castle can't like floor space at all. So I'm interested to see. I think that turnover note that Austin brought up is a really good one in terms of like their ultimate ceiling is like they probably need to rein those things in. But you noted, Mike, their ability to limit transition because of the athletes they have and because of the length they have with Castle and Wemby. They're not getting punished heavily. Now, I think they're more likely to get punished against the good teams than the bad teams on this stuff. And that's ultimately like when we talk about like ultimate ceiling of the Spurs, it might still be a couple of years away from like title contention. But I think they're going to be very, very good in this regular season. I like the depth of the team a lot. And I'm very interested in the Spurs long term. And if it's like long term, are we flipping Fox for like a big wing scorer like at some point? Like what are we roster building with here? Because Harper looks really good in his short stint before getting the calf injury. And then Castle has looked like he kind of needs the ball in his hands to be the best version of himself because he's not going to be a great floor spacer. And he's not like Amen where he's like tall enough that you're like playing him in the dunker or different things like that. So I think I'm interested like what the future of the Spurs looks like. And if De'Aaron Fox is really like, the idea was Fox and Wembanyama was the future, but then they land Dylan Harper in the draft and Stephen Castle continues to develop and you start to wonder.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox has been rusty, according to Mitch Johnson. He said that last night, but he's made every shot at the basket and has been missing a lot of other stuff. Despite making every shot at the basket, he's still shooting 52%, 24% from three. So, yeah, definitely a guy who'll get on track. Minutes are very full. Played 35 and a half last night, but should note they're like splitting touch time. It's almost like 50-50 as far as they're like both 5 minutes per game on touch time. But yeah, going back to the big picture, Austin, you kind of alluded to it. Just bottom line, do you think this team's going to be a top 4 seed right now? They're sitting third.
Let me pull up the standings right now. I mean, I think that OKC is clearly...
I'll set you up a little bit more. Their schedule's been kind of soft. Looking at dunks and threes, they've had the 5th softest offensive schedule and the 2nd softest defensive schedule, for what it's worth.
I think OKC, Denver, and Houston are not locked, but like very likely to finish above the Spurs. And I think the Wolves will also finish above the Spurs. So my answer is no, I don't think they'll be a top 4 seed. But yes, I think they will avoid the play-in at this point. And like I was struggling to even put them in my playoffs at the start of the year. So like that's a huge walk back for me.
Yeah. New information. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Austin that I think they're very likely to finish 4 through 6, somewhere in there. I think OKC, they're just completely. I mean, this is really ridiculous. Denver looks the part, and Houston looks the part that San Antonio. I think we need to see more out of. And then I think the San Antonio, Lakers, Minnesota, and then how healthy can Golden State stay? Right, like one of those teams. It's a little bit of a game of musical chairs of avoiding the play-in, but I think that's the next group. In the West.
Yeah, I agree there. Let's talk about a team that's not in that group anymore, one we thought that would be in it. It's, I would say, hands down the most disappointing team, and that's the Los Angeles Clippers, or LA Clippers, excuse me. I don't even know where to start. We spent so much of the offseason talking about how, whoa, this team's 11 deep. They're going to play Kobe Sanders and Jordan Miller going forward, according to Ty Lue last night. Ty Lue's saying like, oh yeah, we wanted to let Jokic score and he scored 55 on us. Like it's all bad. They're their pace is insane. They're last in transition points. So when their opponent makes a shot, their possessions are 19 seconds per possession. They are so slow. Their defense is like bad. They're 29th in defense, so they play slow. Their defense is bad. Zubats can't protect the paint anymore. They can't create. I mean, teams who are guarding them, like, okay, let's double harden and we'll be good. So I don't know. I think it's over at this point. Obviously, Bradley Beal's out for the year. He's been a disaster even before that. Kawhi Leonard also out with a foot sprain on top of the ankle issue. That's terrifying. It's almost like if you're talking about guys who can get into the playoffs, the Clippers have to make like a tree and leave at this point. Sorry, but Austin, what do you think of the Clippers, and are you as freaked out as I am?
This is the number one thing that has been most surprising to me this year out of all 30 teams is how bad the Clippers have been. I really thought that they would be good this year. I think that, I was talking about this with a friend, like, why are the Clippers so bad? And to be clear, I do think that they will get better, assuming that they don't tank it up and assuming they continue to try. I think they will.
Well, they don't want to tank it up. OKC has their pick.
OKC has their pick.
Yeah. The big thing that I think we landed on is kind of just how important Norm Powell was to this team.
Mm-hmm.
Just like he does so many things that help gel the offense. He is a 40% shooter on huge volume. He can not only catch and shoot, but he's a movement. You can run plays for him. Like he can come off curls. He's also really good at, you run a curl for him and they go over the top, and then he just curls to the basket instead of like coming around for the three. He curls to the basket, and now he has attacking the middle, splitting the seam. Things that the rest of their team cannot and will not do. James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, they don't do that. They need the ball. They need to attack off of the point of attack. All of the sets that Norman Powell did, there isn't a single player on the Clippers that can do that. Bogdan can do some of the like movement shooting things from three, but he can't attack the rim. And also, like, there's so many other issues with Bogdan while he's not playing, like the ball handling, the turnovers, the bad defense, the not boxing out. Like, there's a reason Bogdan's not playing right now. So I think, like, if you look at the way Norm has transcended the Heat's offense, even without Tyler Hero and Bam, and the way that the Clippers offense has dissipated without Norm, like, he's the only difference between both teams. So I think that's a huge thing. Their offense is just really stagnant. Like, James Harden's still good at setting teammates up and creating advantages, but like he has not been efficient himself in like 4 years now. That like his efficiency per shot has not been good. But they're forcing him into, if you watch Clippers games, like they're running so many of these like role players who can't do anything, like Chris Dunn, Nick Batum, Derek Jones Jr. Around him, that he's like forced to take more of these contested shots that have never been efficient. Their hustle stuff and their like rebounding and transition stuff, the stuff that old teams suck at, they've struggled with. That's not really that new. I think the Clippers just did everything else well. Like they were good in the half-court defense. They limited offensive rebounds, and then everything else, hustle-wise, they were fine giving up last year. And now that's kind of biting them. I still think their depth is good, but I think like a lot of the players that we mentioned as like, man, they have 11 deep, it might be like 8 deep. Like Chris Paul looks washed. Beal looked terrible, and Beal's now done. And then I still think Brook Lopez is a usable rotation piece, but just maybe his fit with all these other slow players. You start thinning. Oh, Bogdan also like has not looked good. Now you're down to like 7 to 8 pieces, which is still like, a pretty decent depth for most teams. But that was one of the strengths of the Clippers was like, they could rest two guys every night and be okay. And then now Kawhi's out, so now they're really not deep. I do think they'll get it together somewhat, and I do think if Kawhi comes back, like they're still, call it a fringe top 10 team, top 10 to 12 when Kawhi's in. But the vibes are bad. They have digged themselves out of this bad start, which is like those are real losses that count. So yeah, if I were to if you're gonna ask me like my macro on them now, let me pull up the standings. I think if Kawhi's not out too long, like I still think it's early. I still think they're going to finish in the top 10 in the West. I still think that they're going to be at least a play-in team. I don't think they're going to miss the playoffs. And like you said, their pick is gone, so there's no real reason to give up on it. But the days of the 49 plus wins and the top 4 seed, I think that those are all gone. And if we're talking about contending without a major trade, it is really hard to see this team being a legitimate like path to the finals.
Yeah, to your point, though, I mean, the top 9, Thunder, Nuggets, Spurs, Rockets, Lakers, Wolves, Suns, Blazers, and Warriors, I would pick them ahead of the Clippers right now. So like they have to leapfrog the Jazz or the Grizzlies. We're gonna talk about the Grizzlies in a second. So I don't know. I think they're like not making the playoffs. Like I think they're playing bound at this point. So I've got concerns. And then I mentioned it. Like they used to be the league's best team at limiting offensive rebounds. They're one of the worst right now. It's insane that like Zoo has not been very good. And like obviously the age and the other macro stats I talked about. But Zoo, despite how he's had some good games here and there offensively, his defense has been very, very subpar after a run at Defensive Player of the Year. Think anything else you noted from why the Clippers have been just a disaster so far?
Yeah, Ty Lue, that quote on Jokic, all I could think of was the operation was a success. The patient died. Success. They limited Jokic's passing, but you are dead, Ty Lue to 55. It's interesting. This team I was optimistic on with you guys as well. So like I will take the L on this one just as much. But this has painted a picture to me of, a lot of times when we're thinking about season-long win totals and different things with the NBA, like the NBA is a young man's game. And if you're betting on, like, I think if you're betting on teams in the future of like having surprises to their projections one way or another, it's likely age is going to be heavily factored into that in terms of like breakouts or fall off a cliff type situations. And this Clippers team, like Chris Paul's 40, Batum's 37, Brook Lopez 37, Harden 36, Kawhi 34, Bogdan 33, Beal 32, Dunn 31. Like a lot of those guys that have like just fallen off like entirely are in their mid to late 30s. And it's like, oh, yeah, I guess you could see how Chris Paul at 40 would like go from looking like a pretty solid player last year in San Antonio to like not a rotation player now. And Bogdan like not looking like a rotation player. And so a lot of that depth was built on this veteran capabilities, but it ends up being like more fragile here. And I think in the future for me, it's like a little bit of a reminder of, hey, like I think some of these surprise teams you're going to see like rosters loaded with players in the like 24 to 27 range in terms of age that are like have enough NBA experience that they can take like big leaps forward. And some of the veteran benefits that I expected the Clippers to have in terms of like leadership, depth, being organization, like we're not even seeing that play out on the floor. Like turnover rate is just astronomical for them. And that's the thing what we thought wouldn't be as big of a deal when they bring in CP3, but CP3 like isn't playing well enough to organize the offense and like be out there and have the low turnover rate. So they are a mess. I'm with you, Mike, in the sense that like I think you're hoping for the 10 spot now. Like I think it would be hard to jump some of these teams. Maybe you could argue maybe they can jump the Suns, over the course of the season. So maybe you're hoping for the 9th spot, but like jumping Golden State, Minnesota, the Spurs, like no, I don't see that happening anymore. And yeah, they don't have a way to reinforce this roster during the course of the season either. They don't have assets to be able to do that either. So it's got to come from internal growth, and it's hard to expect internal growth from the age of this roster.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go to the next one. I'm gonna change the order a little bit since it sounds like one we're not as consensus on. Let's go with the Grizzlies. We talked a little bit about them on the last edition with Jaren Jackson and John Morant being a disappointment. Man, they're bad. They're on a 3-game losing streak. They're losing games they shouldn't be losing. They're giving up everything. They're bad on the boards. They're really bad at paint defense. They're going to get Zach Edey back. It sounds like very soon, perhaps even next game. But yeah, Austin, you weren't on the pod last time, but what have you seen from the Grizzlies that makes them so surprisingly bad? Again, we were all down on the Grizzlies. I gave out the under 40.5, so this is a pretty big gap from the top three. But still surprising for them to be this poor, especially on offense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't usually blame any one thing or all things on any one player, but I'm going to say this is John Morant. And you could say like, yeah, he was out last night and they still got ran by the Celtics, but like the Celtics were due for like positive shooting regression at some point. And also it's still John Morant's fault because Memphis built this roster around John Morant. Like they needed him to be this featured role. He asked to have this featured role this year. It hurts that Ty Jerome is out, but like, and Pippen's out, but like they also got rid of like a lot of their other set. Like this team was built around. There's no Desmond Bane. I think it's different if Jerome and Pippen were healthy, and then they could kind of like stomach the Ja loss. But like their team is not built for no Ja, and then with Ja, he's been terrible. Like I think these other teams that are surprising why they're bad. Memphis is surprising that it went this way, but the way that they're losing, if you watch Memphis games, it's not surprising that the score is what it is, if that makes sense. Like, is it surprising they've been bad? Yes, but it's surprising that Ja has given, this little care to winning games. And if you watch any Memphis games, he doesn't box out. He doesn't get back in transition. He flops for all these fouls, and then he gets, pissed and doesn't get back on defense. He's been taking really bad shots. He's been taking a ton of shots, and he's been super inefficient. And he's turned over the ball like crazy. So, like, if you get out in transition, but you aren't, but you're turning the ball over, and then you're not getting back on defense, you're just gifting the opponent however many transition possessions a game that you are without capitalizing yourself. And then the vibes, like how can you possibly want to be his teammate and play on a team where your star is like just bleeding point, like just not caring at all. And then the coach is too scared to say anything because he says one comment that's like very reasonable, extremely reasonable, that he was playing with no energy. And then Ja takes it as like, all right, you hate, like, he blames it on the coaches. Like, this is the offense they wanted. And if you listen to them, I'm not playing with energy. No, Ja, like, you're not playing with energy. Like, I can just tell you that right now. So, I'm squaring most of this. The other thing too is like, why does Jaren only play 28 minutes? I guess that is on the coach's fault.
Yeah.
Like he's clearly their best player. Jaren Jackson per minute is one of the 25 most impactful players in the NBA. I don't think that's controversial at all. Why are you playing him 28 minutes if you want to win? Those are my general thoughts on
I guess it would be turf toe related. They're not getting a lot of questions about that, but I mean, this is like Darius Garland had like a similar procedure, and he was already back to full, and he had a later timeline than Jaren does. So it's definitely surprising to me. But I agree, John Morant, like he's missing everything outside the paint, and they're not even playing fast anymore. Like their transition stuff is way down, partly because the rest of the league's way up, but they're still a bit down from last year. Think anything from you on why the Grizzlies have been so bad?
Yeah, this was one of these situations where, like, kind of contrary to the Clippers, you look at this roster and the ages are like right in the ranges that you would expect like a lot of players to be able to take a step forward, right? Ja's 26, Jaren's 26, Santi Aldama's 25, Cedric Howard 22, Jalen Wells 22. Like, I'd be like, oh, there's a lot of room for surprise upside. But then you have a 32% usage rate at a 47% true shooting percentage with a 12 PER point guard taking up a 30 of your possessions. And like, how could you possibly be good when a 30 of your possessions are like the worst possible offensive performance in basketball? It's like pretty hard to be good in those situations. And that's basically what John Morant's been doing when he's been out there. And it's just been a huge disaster for them. Jaren has not been able to stay out of foul trouble. He's at 5.5 fouls per 36. I think that's part of why the minutes have been down a little bit. I also think the big man rotation has been confusing because it's a lot of Jock Landale and a lot less Santi Aldama, which I thought was like the ideal fit for Ja Morant because you need the floor spacing to be able to get there. But they've had problems.
That's what Ja Morant complained about, was bad spacing.
Yeah. So like, it's just, the vibes are very off in Memphis. And yeah, I don't know that I'm super optimistic about, like, I do think that if Ja played at his normal level, then when they were playing in transition and stuff, like you could get Coward really cooking, you could get ED to come in and hopefully like stabilize things on the boards and defensively a little bit, to have a really good screen setter. Like that's one of the other things. Ja doesn't have a good screen setter right now that also is hurting him quite a bit because he's pretty dependent on pick and roll stuff. So yeah, I think things will improve here. Like I'm actually like in some ways like a little bit more optimistic on improvement from the Grizzlies than I am the Clippers, just because of like youth. But really, I do agree with Austin. It sort of comes down to one player, and like I don't know that I want to be making that bet on Ja Morant, like, taking things a little bit more seriously with accountability. Like that hasn't been the case throughout his whole career.
Yeah, it's such a shame we're not talking about Cedric Howard.
That's what I was going to say.
Like, it's just such a shame. One of the best stories of the first month of the season. He's been so good. He's playing the right way. He shows he's a winning player. He's rebounding. He's shooting. He's been super efficient. He's been defending. He's the primary defender on. Like, we should be talking about him as like a surprise. J-Dub
2.0. J-Dub 2.0. That's what Cedric Howard. Every time I watch Cedric Howard, I was like, this is J-Dub. This is J-Dub like all over.
He's even a better athlete than J-Dub is, though.
With the same length. He doesn't have the handle quite yet that J-Dub, he needs to work on that a little bit, but like the length and disruption and the energy and the winning plays, Coward's been exceptional.
Yeah, for sure. One player he guarded in one game was Devin Booker. So we're going to talk about the Suns. Austin's a little bit on this one, but I mean, I thought this is more like everyone hated on the Suns. They were like the whipping boy for people who would want to like talk about teams who are struggling, and they're playing great. They beat the pants off the Clippers. They did beat up on the Mavericks. They're playing their best ball right now.
The Spurs.
And It all starts with Devin Booker. Devin Booker, Mr. One of the things that pisses me off the most about NBA talk and when they say Devin Booker's not a point guard. Third in potential assists. Third, Jokic and Kane Cunningham. Only guys more potential assists. He's not even converting them. I looked up a stat too. His potentials per pass is the second highest in the NBA among the top 50 guys. Devin Booker's awesome. Devin Booker's seeing the game so great right now. The spacing. Jordan Ott looks like a home run slam dunk higher. I don't know. I'm kind of buying the Suns. I think, like I said, they're probably playing bound. But Austin, what have you been seeing from the Suns? Grayson Allen. He was first in the NBA in 3-point makes per game. I think he probably lost it last night. But what else have you seen from the Suns?
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like they've been about what I expected them to be. I didn't expect them to be that bad. I think the hate on the Suns comes more from their situation, like what they did, their ownership, the trades, like the situation that they put themselves in with poor roster decisions from a 3-year to 5-year window is, I think, where the hate comes from. I never thought that they'd be this bad because like they have a lot of underrated players. I think that Booker, Beal, and KD all thrive the best when they're by themselves, especially Booker and KD. So like I thought that we would see the best version of Booker without those two, because he is an on-ball player at the end of the day. And surrounding him with a competent center for the first time, like they got destroyed on all the rebounding stats. And Mark Williams alone has single-handedly like almost completely fixed that issue just because he's such a good rebounder. And then they have a lot of like very underrated role players. I consider all of Colin Gillespie, Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, Dylan Brooks to be like extremely useful. Like if the Suns sold at the deadline, like the Lakers would be in on all of those pieces. Like they have a ton of like useful shooting, guarding, 0.5 kind of players. I don't think Jalen Green's that good, but he hasn't had to play and contribute negatively. And also he was really good in his one game that he did play. The only things I would say that were surprising to me that I didn't expect Grayson Allen to be this good and this efficient while scaling up this much volume. And
almost 5 assists per game too.
And then the other ones, I think Jordan Ott, I think has been really good, just the way that he's like shaping their shot profiles on offense and defense. So I think those are the two things that maybe I didn't see, but I think that Phoenix is sustainable as like a back end 7 through 10, 500 type team.
Yep. Dink, go ahead.
Well, I don't think any of us had them in the play-in, so I think they're outperforming those expectations. I'm surprised here, but I also don't think it's sustainable. I don't think Royce O'Neal is a 45% shooter from three. I don't think he's a 66% true shooting percentage guy. Grayson has been a 63. He's at 63% true shooting percentage. He's been around there for most of his career, but I shared the same concerns Austin had in terms of scaling up and how that would impact things right now. I think they're shooting the ball very, very well right now, and I think that shooting will regress over time. Now, they've also had the benefit or, challenge of playing without Jalen Green to this point. I don't know how that's going to mix in things as well in terms of like right now, the vibes are really good with like everybody knows their role. Everybody's playing their role. Jalen Green, when he came back, looked exceptional when he came back in kind of that like lead, like take turns ball handler role with Devin Booker. So maybe it'll ultimately all work. Also, I'm very skeptical of Mark Williams' ability to stay healthy. And I think this is all like a little bit of a house of cards at the center position if Mark Williams goes. So I am still skeptical of the Suns, but I think they're playing great. And I think the biggest thing for me is like, much like I said in the capitulation podcast, in terms of the previous episode with Miami, like I had concerns about the vibes coming into the season and just being kind of a lost season and different things like that. I think the vibes have been really good. I think everybody seems to be very happy in Phoenix around the way that they're playing and like the role and how they fit in the team. So I think that's all good. I think they're the team that you look at the top 9 right now in the West and you're like, that's the teams are going to target to try to leapfrog amongst these other teams. And I think the truth is, if they maintain this level of play, this like around 500 level of play, they won't be selling at the deadline. I don't think they will, because I think Matt Ishbia is going to be like, we got to get into the playoffs because I got to have something to hang my hat on, when they should be selling in this instance to continue to like rebuild this thing from the bottom up. But I think they've been a nice, pleasant surprise for me. I think they're confidently in the mix for the play-in playoffs, which I did not think they would be this year. But I do think they're benefiting from some hot shooting early in the season.
And
I think
benefiting from schedule. I'll just, before I throw it to you, before we wrap it up, their last 4 wins when they're hot at Dallas, we just crapped on. 2 against the Clippers, we just crapped on. And then the Pelicans, who Austin wanted to mention as a big disappointment, those are the last 4 wins. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's Trevor's good point about Mark Williams' health, just injury history is like,
Yeah.
I think I still firmly stand, like, sure, there's some regression coming, like Book probably won't shoot 50 from the field and some of the 3-point shooting will regress, but I think there's still like a mid to upper 30s win team, true talent wise, even with the regression. The one point that I agree with is the Mark Williams, like if he gets hurt, I think it could go south pretty poorly, because I look at this team as very like role compressed, like everyone is good in their role. If one of like Gillespie, Allen, Royce, Brooks got hurt, they can replace that with other players that do similar things. But if Booker or Mark Williams got hurt, there isn't a replacement for those two that like is meaningfully close to what they do. Like you look at Nick Richards and Oso Ighodaro, like Nick Richards is much worse, and Oso Ighodaro cannot control the rebounds at all. So like their one weakness comes back again. So I think, health permitting, I believe in this team more than it sounds like you guys do. But yeah, if Williams gets hurt,
on the same page, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark Williams is a big one. Just to note, Mark Williams on the court defensive rating 106, off the court 119. So that really is all you need to know about how valuable he is, and he's been pretty good. Go ahead, Dick. Anything you want to add and wrap it up?
No, I appreciate your guys' perspectives on talking through this. It's always good to have a little disagreement too on the podcast, which I think introducing a third member into the team with Austin has brought some of those great discussions. So appreciate you guys talking through the top surprises. It's always fun to do this early in the season. If any of you all out there listening are interested in checking out any of our premium content, you can go to establishadrun.com/subscribe for more details on our premium NBA product offerings. We've got props picks packages. We've got full stat projections packages. We've got the DFS packages. We're really proud of the work that we're putting in over there on the projection side, on the content side, on breaking news and information in our Discord throughout the evening as well, to try to help people get a head start on prop betting or on their DFS lineups and late swaps and different things like that. So we're putting a ton of effort into our products. We're really proud of them. You can check them out at establishadrun.com/subscribe for more details on our premium NBA product offerings.
All right, we'll be back next Thursday. Appreciate you guys. Catch you next time.